Andalusia. Down there in the bottom right corner, you can see all that heavy rain and some lightning beginning to approach Highway 29 just to the south of Andalusia. Rain filling in farther off toward the north, closer to Andalusia. Again, there's radar. We'll take a look at velocity. And again, this is something that we're probably going to be using pretty often as we head throughout the morning. And the big thing will be trying to find the right radar site to pull these wind speeds from. And again, granted, some of these are aloft in the region, 3 miles per hour. That is probably not the correct thing there. So we'll try that again. And that'll be the biggest thing, is just sampling these wind speeds as we head throughout the morning. And there's more on the way farther back off toward the west. Just keeping an eye on things going on over in Mobile. They've got some of those severe thunderstorm warnings farther off to their west, about to move into Mobile with some of those wind threats as high as 80 miles per hour, and that'll be something that eventually makes its way into our region as we head throughout the morning. So it looks like the strongest winds moving through just to the north of Andalusia, the Crenshaw County especially, seeing some of those strongest winds again, mostly through Laverne and into Brantley. And again, this pretty quickly moves through the region. Storm motions on these are fairly fast, and while that's a good thing, we want to get these storms through here as quickly as possible. But along with that, we're going to be dealing with some pretty gusty winds on the leading edge of these storms. You can see several of these wind speeds here along the leading edge of this rain, as high as 65, 70 miles per hour. And this will pretty much be the name of the game as this line continues to move eastward across the rest of the region. Laverne seeing some fairly gusty winds as well. We'll pop up a quick wind query up there, and again around 50, 60 miles per hour. Granted, a little bit aloft, but with the way these storms work, it will not take very much to start to get some of that wind that is aloft down to the surface, and that's where we get those damaging straight line winds from. Not seeing much at the moment. Granted, we're just getting started here, but not seeing much in the way of damage or power outage reports or anything like that. But when we have wind speeds as fast as what we could see throughout the morning, it's looking fairly certain that we'll start to see some of both of those reports popping up, both in the form of damage reports and power outages. Another thing that we're going to have to watch out for, we mentioned the potential for a tornado is low, but it's not quite zero. Along the leading edge of this line, there's this little bit of a kink that's starting to pop up here just to the east of Laverne, about to push eastward into Goshen over in the far western portions of Pike County. Not to say this will spin up into a tornado, but it's going to be stuff like this along the leading edge of the line that could very, very quickly drop a tornado. It may be a little on the stronger side of things with some of the winds that we have going on in the upper levels. It's not expected to last very long, but be prepared along some of the radar signatures that look a little bit more like that just to the north of Glenwood. Cannot be completely ruled out that we see a quick spin-up tornado somewhere along the leading edge of this line. It's just yet another thing that we're going to have to watch. We're going to have to keep an eye on as this line of storms continues to move off toward the east. I will take you momentarily to a bit of a wider view of satellite and radar just to show you kind of what we have going on even outside of our region. So we got the storms that are already moving through Covington, Crenshaw, and then over into Coffee, Dale, and Houston counties, as well as some a little bit farther off toward the north in Pike and Barber County. That's obviously the immediate threat right now. Farther back off toward the west, you can see this other Boeing segment that is now starting to move into the southwest portions of Alabama. Mobile about to see that round of storms. There's already been severe thunderstorm warnings with wind threats as high as 80 miles per hour with this Boeing segment of storms. So as that continues to move off toward the east, that'll be something that we have to watch out for as we head throughout the rest of the morning. Models have not really handled this well. If you recall, back toward the morning show yesterday when we were walking through Futurecast, it was pretty much one entire Boeing segment that makes its way across the region. Instead, we have two separate ones, and it's not uncommon in these very, very volatile and fluid situations that there may be some model inconsistencies here. there's a lot of stuff that's happening with these storms that really kind of dictates what happens later on, almost in real time, that models don't really do a great job of picking up on. So this is the situation that we've got here. Obviously, the most pressing issue is this first Boeing segment that's already moving through portions of Covington and Crenshaw County, but farther back off toward the west, the southern half of the region, we'll have to watch out for this Boeing segment that's moving its way now closer to Mobile. And again, some of the wind threats on those storms already starting to jump up as high as 80 miles per hour with that segment of storm. So we're going to have to watch all of this as it continues to move off toward the east. And as we keep mentioning, fortunately, a lot of this is moving through pretty quickly. That's a view from Troy this morning, and that was a lot of lightning right there, almost consistent lightning with some of these storms as they continue to move through the region. That's just a example of how kind of charged the atmosphere is early this morning, where you're getting almost constant lightning, very heavy rain. We'll see some scattered areas of damaging winds, and we could see a little bit of hail. We're going to be using not only velocity, but the view from the ground from Troy, from Andalusia, and then once this continues to push eastward in places like Ozark and Dothan, those sky cameras are going to be a really good tool for us, and velocity going to be a really good tool for us as well. Let's go ahead and jump back into some of these other storms. We'll take a look at Dothan and the surrounding areas. Not too terribly much going on, nothing that really jumps out at me as far as just overwhelmingly gusty winds, but be aware as those storms begin to move through the region, we'll see some of those gusty winds. Most of Dothan right now seeing some of that rain, and there's a view from downtown Dothan, and it's very similar to what we're seeing just about elsewhere around the region. Quite a bit of lightning, some heavy rain coming down, and I'm sure there's some gusty winds, but just not yet rising to the level of damaging winds. And we'll try to zoom back in here and take a closer look closer to home. Again, heavy rain coming down in Dothan, lots of lightning back out toward Midland City. Ozark probably seeing quite a bit of lightning as well. Again, there's probably some gusty winds. Heavy rain extends farther back off toward the west into Enterprise and over toward Opp. Also seeing quite a bit in the way of that lightning. Pretty much just heavy rain, lots of lightning, and some gusty winds with all of these storms stretching from Opp through Enterprise and over into Dothan. Not really worried about a whole lot in the way of damaging winds with these storms, but it's going to be these other storms that are farther back off toward the west that we're going to start to watch as far as that damaging wind threat goes. Heads up, Troy, probably within the next 10 to 15 minutes, you'll see this line of storms moving out of Crenshaw County, now starting to move into Pike County. Henderson, already starting to see some of that heavy rain pick up. Troy, within about the next 10 to 15 minutes, you'll see some of that heavier rain and those stronger winds, and then over into Brundage as well, probably within about the next 20 minutes or so. We'll take another look at the wind speeds in some of these storms. And again, right here along this leading edge of the line, Goshen, seeing some fairly windy conditions at the moment. There's again a live view from Troy as these storms continue to approach the region. You've already seen a little bit of rain, but your main round of heavy rain and strong winds probably about 10 minutes or so away. And again, taking a look at some of these wind speeds on radar, 66 miles per hour, 64 miles per hour. Admittedly, these have come down a little bit, which is definitely some good news. There's some 70 mile per hour winds a little bit farther off toward the south, but this is pretty much going to be the name of the game, not only with this first line of storms that rolls through the region, but with that other one that's just now making its way into the southwestern portions of Alabama. For the most part, we're going to see those wind gusts between 65, 70, 75 miles per hour, but in some very specific cases, in a couple of locations, we could see some of those wind gusts reach as high as 75 or 80 miles per hour. So that's definitely something that we'll continue to keep an eye on as this line continues to move off toward the east. But for right now, our main concern going to be over in the northwestern corner of the region. Again, strong winds already moving through Goshen, the far western portions of Pike County, and this continues to race off toward the east. So places like Troy, places like Banks, places like Brundage. Within the next 10 to 20 minutes, you're going to see the leading edge of that line move its way into your area. You'll see some very, very strong winds right as the leading edge of this line makes it into your area. You'll see some heavy rain, frequent lightning as well, and then things start to settle down decently quickly. Once that leading edge of the line moves through, we'll still see some gusty winds farther back behind the line, but as far as those damaging winds go, it's going to be right along that main line of storms. And also, as we mentioned yesterday, with the shape of these storms, really going to matter as well. While most of this is within a fairly straight line from north to south, the places that we're going to have to watch a little bit closer for some locally stronger winds is going to be in these areas. There's a little bit right here. You can see where those lighter blue colors, some of those stronger winds, is kind of starting to rush a little bit farther out ahead of the rest of this line. Anywhere where we get some of these higher wind speed colors, push a little bit farther out ahead of the rest of the line, right within the middle of that bowing segment. That's where we're probably going to see some locally stronger winds than what's going on elsewhere right along that line of storms. Henderson, probably within the next 2 or 3 minutes, you'll see some of those stronger winds move into your area. And then again, about 5 to 10 minutes from now to be in Troy, 15 to 20 minutes or so to make its way over into Banks and Brundage. Looks like for right now we're still just looking at severe thunderstorm warnings, but we will have to watch this for the potential for a few spin-up tornadoes as well. Here in Dothan, there's a lot of rain coming down. There's a lot of lightning. There's probably some gusty winds as well. We're not really worried about damaging winds just yet. That comes when this line of storms gets closer to Dothan. Same goes for places like Ozark, places like Enterprise. Rain is coming down. There's lots of gusty winds, and there's quite a bit of heavy rain as well, but still for the most part not worried about damaging winds. Just got word in my ear, we've got video from downtown. Yeah, that's what's going on in downtown Dothan right now, and it's a lot of the things that I mentioned just a few seconds ago. Lots of heavy rain, lots of lightning, as you can see, and you can see those fairly strong winds as well, but this is just the beginning of what we have on the way for us as we continue to progress throughout the morning. There's another view of that line of storms continuing to move through Pike County. Biggest concern as far as some of the strongest winds going to be right here just to the north of Henderson, where some of these brighter colors are starting to push a little bit farther outward than the rest of the line of storms. You can see some of those stronger winds extending farther back off toward the north, but more so in a straight line. It's right there within that curve just to the north of Henderson, where we could see some locally stronger winds. Will pop up some of those wind speeds once again. And again, I want to take note, these are going to be a little bit more aloft. The radar beam shoots up into the clouds, not right down along the ground. So these winds are for location or for areas that are just a little bit off the ground, but with the stuff that we have in play today, it will not take very much to get that 68 mile per hour wind down to the ground, and that more than qualifies as a straight line damaging wind. And we're seeing that pretty much all along the leading edge of this line, 72 miles per hour, 76 miles per hour. And again, it doesn't take much in this setup to start to get those winds down to the ground. And that's why we're particularly concerned with the potential for strong damaging winds as this line continues to move through the region. We'll take a quick reset right quick. We'll take you back to the wider view of radar here and put this into motion. Again, for Enterprise, for Ozark, for Dothan, for Abbeville, and over toward the Georgia and the Alabama state line, you're looking at heavy rain, you're looking at gusty winds, you're looking at lots of lightning, but we're not worried just yet as far as damaging winds go. Covington County, you're starting to see some of those stronger winds move in, and especially right here in the northern portions of Coffee County and into the central portions of Pike County. You're seeing some of the strongest winds right now. We'll go back down and zoom back into those areas. Again, northern Coffee County, north of Elba, about to move into Victoria. Rain now moving through Henderson, and probably within the next minute or two, we'll start to see some of those stronger winds in Troy as well, then continuing farther off toward the east. Jack is out here, Ayrton, Clio over in the western portions of Barber County. This is probably in your area within about the next 20 to 30 minutes or so. But Troy, by far, probably the biggest location as far as population goes that is next in line to see this fairly strong line of storms, a fairly stout line of storms. And again, probably within the next minute or two, rain is probably already on the increase there in Troy. You're going to see a lot of lightning on the increase as well. And right along the leading edge of that line, we could see some of those wind gusts as high as 65 or 70 miles per hour. That could be enough to push some trees down and do some damage. So this morning, we want to treat severe thunderstorm warnings almost with a very similar kind of respect as we would tornado warnings. I don't think we necessarily have to go completely into a tornado warning plan, but a lot of the same kind of stuff still applies for these severe thunderstorm warnings as they would for tornado warnings. I don't think you have to get in a basement or a closet or anything like that, but definitely want to make sure you get as close to the center of your home as you can. Definitely away from any outside walls and windows. And just kind of ride this out until this line makes its way through the region. Then things start to calm down pretty quickly. Back on the backside of that, things already starting to quiet down in Laverne, Highland Home, Petrie, over toward Glenwood, Goshen. Things should start winding down over the next few minutes as well. But again, as these storms roll through the region, treat it with a very similar kind of respect as you would a tornado warning. No, you don't have to go all the way into that tornado warning plan where you get in a closet, a basement, something like that. But definitely make sure you want to get out and get away from those outside walls and windows, and just kind of ride this stuff out as it continues to move its way through the region. Troy, you're probably within about a minute or so of seeing those strong winds start to move into your region. It's now moving into the western portions of Troy at the moment. Little Oak seeing some of that, some of those stronger winds as well. Farther off toward the north, McClurtown, you'll see it right about when Troy sees it. And again, we're going to have some fairly strong winds with this as it continues to roll through the region. We'll pop up some more of those wind speeds as that continues to move its way through the region. It looks like we're definitely getting some pretty strong winds there. Is that 82 miles per hour? Yeah, 82 miles per hour. Again, granted, this is a little bit elevated, but we're starting to get to a point where we're not too terribly far from the radar site. So these 82 mile an hour winds that are being picked up by radar, it's not very, very far off the ground, and it won't be very long until we start to see some of those gusty winds make its way down to the surface. You can see business really starting to pick up there in Troy. Kenneth, is there any way we can take that full screen, that view from Troy? Is there any way we can take that full screen for a quick second? All right, they're getting that punched up, but yeah, it looks like especially in Troy, yeah, that's all right. While we're getting that punched up, yeah, west side of Troy, north side of Troy, especially where these dark blue colors are, just crossing over Highway 231, about to make its way into the central portions of Troy. Those are some pretty strong winds there, and there's a full look of what's going on in Troy at the moment. And yeah, things have gotten very, very busy, very, very fast there. You can see those rain curtains moving from right to left across the front of the camera. Lots of lightning, and you can even see the gusty winds really kind of shaking that camera a little bit. So if you're in Troy, things are pretty rough right now as these storms start to move into the region. Thank you, Kenneth. We can go back to, yeah, thank you. And man, those are some strong winds that are starting to pop up here on velocity here on the north side of Troy. 83, 86. I mean, those are some fairly strong winds. And again, granted, this is a little bit aloft, but we're not talking too terribly far off the ground. If you can get some of those wind gusts up to around 75 or 80 miles per hour, that can definitely push some trees down and do some damage. So here in Troy and northward from there, that's where we're most concerned with some of the strongest winds that are already starting to push their way through the region just shortly after 3 o'clock this morning, already 3:10 early this Friday morning, and very, very concerned about some of those wind gusts reaching as high as 80, 85 miles per hour, a little bit off the ground, but it would not take much to get those gusty winds to the ground, and that's definitely something that we are concerned about as this line of storms moves through the region. That looks like some of the one place where we're seeing some of those strongest winds is right now in Troy. In addition to the winds, quite a bit of heavy rain and quite a bit of lightning as well, as you can still see in that view down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen as that line moves through. Lots of heavy rain, lots of lightning, and definitely some very, very strong winds as well. And again, some of those strongest winds moving right here through Troy, now pushing through Troy. Now, if you're on the eastern side of Troy, that's where we're starting to see some of those strongest winds pop up. And again, some of these, as we've moved our way through time, as high as 80 or 85 miles per hour. And That's pretty strong. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that, but those are some pretty strong winds, and definitely something that we're concerned about as this moves off toward the east. So let's look farther down the line here. So again, within these darker colors, some of these wind gusts, at least radar indicated a little bit above the ground, as high as 80 to 85 miles per hour. Down to the surface, that's probably about 70 or 75 miles per hour. Still enough to do some form of damage. So we'll slide this a little bit farther off toward the east. Banks, within the next 3 to 5 minutes or so, these stronger wind gusts will start to move into your region along Highway 29 through Banks into the east of Banks. You'll be seeing some of these stronger winds as well. It's now making its way through Troy. You can really see those gusty winds starting to move through Troy. I believe that's from Troy University. And yeah, they are, wow. That's some pretty strong winds that are moving through. You can see some of the rain that's swirling there on the other side of the bit, and it looks like they just lost power. So we're definitely seeing enough wind that we're knocking out power, and I'm sure this is almost certainly doing damage. You can see the view there from Troy University. Lots of lightning, almost consistent lightning. Looks like they got power back, but this is going to be the kind of stuff that we deal with all around the Wiregrass this morning, not just here in Troy, not just in really any single location. There's going to be the potential to see that all across the Wiregrass as this line of storms continues to make its way through the region. You just saw the view there, power very, very briefly going out there at Troy University in Troy, and we could definitely see quite a bit in the way of power outages with some of that wind damage as this continues to move eastward through the region. So definitely very, very concerned with this potential for some strong damaging winds. And you're seeing the scenes there in Troy as that line continues to quickly race its way off toward the east. Storm motions are pretty fast on these, which is, again, a big reason why these wind speeds are so high. The line that is now moving through Troy, I'm reading some of the warning text here, moving east at 65 miles per hour. So right around highway speeds, these are just continuing to race off toward the east. Again, Banks, you're probably about 3 to 5 minutes away from seeing some of those stronger winds make their way into your region as well. Radar has already indicated some wind gusts, at least just barely off the ground, as high as 80 or 85 miles per hour. You saw the scene there in Troy University. Lots of gusty winds, lots of heavy rain, lots of lightning. You saw the power briefly go out there at Troy University. So it looks like we just lost radar data. I wonder if the Fort Novacell radar site has just gone down. Maybe that's just a glitch. Maybe we'll get it back in just a moment. We will, give me just a moment right quick to kind of reset and see what we're dealing with here. We may have lost Fort Novacell's radar site. And here's the problem, or here's the things that we're dealing with while we have all these storms moving through the region. Not only can it affect the power and all that stuff from cameras and your appliances, it can affect us as far as radar data goes. So right now we're kind of left with lightning data, quite a bit of lightning moving through Troy and just to the south of Andalusia, to the north of Florala. Enterprise seeing a lot of that lightning as well. And while we're kind of without radar data, this is kind of what we're going to have to kind of work with, is where all of these higher concentrations of lightning are. There's a view from, I think, is this still our Troy camera? Yeah, this is still our Troy camera, and things should start to wind down here within about the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. There was definitely a moment there for a minute where those wind gusts really, really started to pick up. We saw the power momentarily flicker, and now things should start to kind of calm down here in Troy over about the next 10 minutes. So it looks like we're starting to get that radar data back. Looks like it was just kind of a momentary glitch. Kenneth, let's give that just another minute or so to let that kind of reset. Let's go back full screen to that view from Troy. And again, these are going to be the views that we're going to see all across the region as we head throughout the rest of the morning. Eventually this starts to head into Ozark, into Dothan, into Abbeville, over into Clio, over into Eufaula, probably within about the next, probably about 45 minutes to an hour. Again, these storms are rushing off toward the east at around 65 miles per hour, and you're going to see views very, very similar to this. Almost constant lightning. There's not much of a break in between those lightning strikes. Okay, I was just getting something in my ear. Where was that? Enterprise? Okay, so Enterprise, Pinkard, Midland City, already seeing some power outages. I've already seen another report that somebody sent in to me on my phone. We have seen some hail in Midland City as well, which is not uncommon, especially in this setup with any cells that develop out ahead of that main line of storms. Not alone here. We just had meteorologist Zack Hatcher make his way into the studio, and it'll be the Zack and Zack show as we cover these strong storms that move through the region. Zack, I know you just got here. It's gotten off to a pretty busy start, and there's still more storms on the way. I know you've been kind of scrolling around on radar and all that stuff. Tell me some of the things that you've been covering as you've made your way in.
Yeah, Zach, well, let me tell you, it's really something to wake up to this, all that lightning and thunder, but you know what, we'll get through it. Doppler radar has been very active as you've been tracking so far. A lot of different coloration on the map. You're seeing some heavy rainfall along with that band of wind that's gone through Troy, causing what I suspect those power outages. And it's really co-located with a ton of lightning. I'll zoom in here to Pike County just to show you what kind of lightning we're dealing with. Just dots, strikes, however you want to put them, all across this county, it seems like. So this is a very loud line of storms, and it is packing a punch, not just with the heavy rainfall, but showing you base velocity here to give you an idea of what those wind speeds could be. Now, this is about 28 to 30 miles away from the radar, depending on where you're looking at it, but I do suspect that that's at least 60 mile per hour winds that are at least reaching the ground in spots there, and that will cause trees to come down, especially if those trees are weak already or in the process of dying or oriented toward where the wind's blowing, then it's going to take a direct hit. But also power lines could be coming down, and that's what's going to cause a power outage. But you have to watch out for that because this is moving through quickly at forward speed around 50 to 60 miles per hour minimum, so you don't have much time to prepare for this as it comes through here. But this band of wind, this strong area of wind is now pushing into Barber County over the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. And then Clio will be in the loop for this, and then areas around there such as Louisville, Blue Springs, probably getting hit pretty good with this strong to damaging wind. And we have all these warnings too to cover it. Now, not every part of these warnings will experience severe wind gusts, but for sure sections of them will. But I think the highest wind speeds right now are right there in Brundage, and we can take a sample of the wind speed. This is showing 87 miles per hour. That's about 28, 29 miles or so from the radar, but it's getting, it's closing that gap the longer that I'm talking to you because it's just moving so fast. I think that's easily 60 to maybe 65 miles per hour in that one spot. No doubt causing some damage, some tree damage in Brundage. There'll be stuff to go scope out after this, unfortunately. But yeah, Zach, this has really just been an active morning. But the one thing for I throw back to you, I'm not really seeing much of a tornado threat yet.
No.
There is a chance for one, but our main concern is definitely this wind right now.
Yeah, damaging winds definitely going to be the biggest threat for us, and that's something that we knew was going to be kind of the primary threat for us as these line of storms make their way through the region. But as Zach mentioned, tornado threat is pretty low, but it's not zero. Anywhere along this leading edge of the line of storms, we could see a little bit of rotation spin up, very quickly drops a tornado. It probably very quickly lifts, probably in some cases before the warning is able to even be issued. We have a tornado that drops down and picks right back up, but it would be right along that leading edge of that line of storms. But far and away, the most concerning thing that we're watching out for right now is that damaging wind threat, and right now that threat is maximized over the far northeast corner of Coffee County, starting to move into the northwest corner of Dale County, Ozark, starting to get a little bit closer to some of that heavier wind, heavier rain and stronger winds as well. Then right here along the eastern portions of Pike County, now to the east of Troy, now moving through Brundage and Banks. That's probably where we're dealing with the highest concern for some of those strong damaging winds, and pretty quickly this makes its way over into Barber County, so from Clio to Clayton and Eufaula, probably within the next 15 minutes in places like Clio to probably around the next 30 to 45 minutes over in Eufaula. We'll see this pretty intense line of storms very, very quickly move its way through your location. Things already starting to wind down in Troy, as you can see in that live view from out over Troy University. So some rain coming down. It's still quite a bit of lightning as well. Looks like the wind for the most part has started to come down a bit, but things definitely got really, really intense there for about 2 to 3 minutes as the main core of that line moved its way through the region. And we're going to see some very, very similar scenes as we move farther off toward the east. So again, Clio, Clayton, Eufaula in the southern half of Barber County, probably within about the next 5 to 10 minutes in Clio to about the next 30 to 45 minutes over in Eufaula. You will see those very, very intense storms move into the region. Got a report on my phone while you were talking, Hatcher, about what's going on farther off toward the west. I mentioned right as we hopped on, we had some severe thunderstorm warnings in Mobile that had damaging wind threats of up to 80 miles per hour. Over in Choctaw County, which is over there close to Mobile, over in that southwest corner of the state, already some reports of power being lost with some of these straight line winds moving through the region, and that will eventually roll its way into our neck of the woods as well. We'll zoom in a little bit closer on some of these storms that are now moving out of Pike and Coffee County, now moving into Dale County and about to move into the far western portions, at least the southwest corner of Barber County. Clio and Ozark, you're the next couple of locations that'll be under the gun for this round of pretty intense thunderstorms that are moving its way through the region. There's a look at things on radar. There's a look at velocity, and we're starting to get closer to the radar site. Ayrton, you're starting to see some of those very, very strong winds move into your area right now, and we're starting to get a little bit closer to the radar site. That radar beam not interacting with these storms as high up in the atmosphere as it was when it was farther back over places like Crenshaw County. And again, as we keep mentioning, in these areas where this kind of segment bows out a little bit more, Ayrton eventually making its way over into Doster, that's where we're going to be most concerned with some of the strongest winds that'll blow through. So Ayrton, if it's not windy, raining, this, that, and the other like it was in Troy right now, it will be probably within the next minute or two. And taking a look at some of those wind speeds right along the leading edge of the line, 70, 75 miles per hour aloft. That's probably around 60 or 65 miles per hour closer to the surface. And we've got some of those strong, even stronger winds as you move farther off toward the north. So overall, the general idea here is right along the surface, we could see some wind gusts of 65, 70, 75 miles per hour. But with the atmosphere that we have in place, the environment that we have in place earlier this morning, while 65 to 70 miles per hour going to be the general idea, we could see some of those wind gusts extend as high as 75 or 80 miles per hour. I've gotten word we've got pictures of some of that hail from Midland City, and yeah, that's some pretty good size hail. Looks to be about quarter size or about $half sized, and obviously it's a little bit hard to tell. Everybody's hand size is a little bit different, obviously, so we're just kind of estimating what we're looking at here, and that looks to be about $half size hail, which fits what we've seen as possible in some of those severe thunderstorm warnings as some of those storms roll through. Several locations could see some hail very, very similar to that as those storms move through the region. Then as those main complexes of storms, those main lines of storms move through the region, that's when we could see some of those damaging winds between around 65, 70, 75 miles per hour with some locally higher wind gusts as well. This leading line of storms, this is over in the northern half of the region. This is Coffee County, farther back off toward the bottom right. Pike County, this is the Pike and Barber County line right here where some of those strongest winds are starting to move in. And then this is the northwestern portion of Dale County. So Highway 231 seeing some pretty gusty winds coming out of Pike County and into Dale County. Ayrton, again, if it's not raining like crazy, lightning like crazy, or gusty winds like crazy, it will be probably within the next minute or so if it's not already there, and then probably within the next 3 to 5 minutes. Doster, about 5 to 10 minutes. It'll be in Clio. You can see some of those winds now pushing through Ayrton and now moving into Doster. And again, we'll just keep seeing what these wind speeds look like right here along the leading edge of these storms, now moving into the southwest corner of Barber County, and there'll probably be some, 70, 75 miles per hour. Again, just barely off the ground, but it won't take much to get some of those wind gusts to the ground. And it's when we get some of these wind gusts of 75, close to 80 miles per hour down to the ground, that's when we're really concerned with the potential for some of those damaging straight line winds. And even farther off toward the south, right along the Barber and the Dale County line, we're seeing some of those wind speeds just barely aloft of right around 70 to 75 miles per hour. So again, you want to be taking these storms seriously. We want to treat severe thunderstorm warnings today with the environment that we have in place very, very similar to the way that you would a tornado warning. I don't think you have to go as far as to go into a closet, go into a bathroom or anything like that, go down into a basement or anything like that. We at the very least want to get you away from any sort of outdoor walls and windows. Some of these winds could be strong enough to do, at the very least, push a tree down and could knock out some windows or do other kinds of damage. So we definitely want to get you away from those outdoor walls and windows and just kind of ride this out as these storms move through the region. A pretty intense line of storms rolling through. Hatcher, I want to toss it back over to you right quick. I know I have NWS chat pulled up there on that computer that you're looking at. I have not been able to check it as much on my phone here recently with these storms coming through. Is there anything that you're seeing on NWS chat, whether it be from Mobile or whether it be from Tallahassee, that we're really seeing as far as storm reports or what those guys are seeing from some of these storms as they move through?
So I'm looking through it now. I don't see anything yet, but I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, things are just getting started, so we're going to just get started getting some of those weather reports. And I've already gotten several reports from people that I know on my phone of power outages or hail or wind damage or stuff like that. So those are definitely some good things. And I know on our Facebook live stream, I know we've gotten several comments with some reports of especially hail in Midland City. So those are all really good. Whatever you're seeing, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, and tell us what you're seeing, or what kind of winds are you seeing, what kind of heavy rain, lightning, hail, whatever you're seeing, post those down in the comments. Let us know what you're seeing. That stuff is just as important. The ground truth that you guys are seeing as these storms rolls through the region is just as important as what we're tracking here on radar. So whatever storm reports you have, send those in to us, whether it be by email or if you're watching on that Facebook live stream, post those in the comments and let us know what's going on. And obviously, people in my ear or people that are let me know on my phone, let me know what we're seeing in the comments so we can get a pretty good idea of what's going on around the region. For right now, this is the most pressing issue. This line of very, very strong winds that's now moving out of Pike County, out of Coffee County, and now moving into the far northern portions of Dale County and into the western parts of Barber County. At times, radar has picked up wind gusts as high as 80 or 85 miles per hour. That's a little bit raised off the ground, but even when you have 80, 85 mile per hour winds just a little bit off the surface, those are probably still 65, 70 miles per hour down toward the ground. So definitely some very, very strong winds there. And we'll zoom back in and take a look at what we're seeing as far as some of those wind speeds go across the region. Again, we've already seen several locations see some of these wind gusts that radar has been picking up as high as 80 or 85 miles per hour. This is the primary area that we're watching, mostly right along the Dale and Barber County line. Ayrton, things should start to calm down over the next several minutes. Doster, within about the next 5 to 10 minutes, things should start to calm down. Heads up farther toward the east, Hills Crossroads, Dykes Crossroad, Blue Springs, Tyler Crossroads. You guys are going to be next in line to see some of these very, very strong winds move through the region. Again, some of these at times, radar's been estimating as high as 75 or 80 miles per hour. And we'll just kind of take a few different spots here right along the leading edge of that line. Most of these between 65 and 75 miles per hour, but as you can see there just to the east of Doster, radar picking up on some wind speeds just barely off the ground around 84 miles per hour. So that could pretty easily mean 65, 70 mile per hour wind gusts down to the surface. That can definitely be enough to knock out power and push down some of those weaker trees as that rushes through the region. But all of this continues to move very quickly off toward the east at around 65 miles per hour. Kenneth, do we have, can we show the live view from Ozark? I know that's a little bit south from here, but they should be getting pretty close to seeing that line of storms as well. There's that view from downtown Ozark. Can we pull that up full screen right quick? We'll jump back into radar here in just a second. But yeah, things not looking at least quite as bad here in downtown Ozark. Some of those strongest winds are off toward the north, but even kind of in a muted sense as far as that damaging wind threat goes. Things still looking fairly intense here in downtown Ozark. You can see quite a bit of lightning. Doesn't look like the winds are too terribly gusty, at least for the moment here in downtown Ozark. But at the very least, rain coming down very heavily, and we're seeing quite a bit of lightning as well. We can come back to radar, and we'll clear all these wind reports out and kind of do a little bit of a reset again. Teals Crossroads down toward Dykes Crossroad, you're next in line to see some of those stronger wind gusts push through the region, and this will continue to very, very quickly race off toward the east at around 65 miles per hour. Blue Springs, and then over into the southeast corner of Barber County and the northeast corner of Dale County, going to be next in line to see some of those stronger winds. We're also getting a little bit closer to the radar site. Here is the radar site just to the south of Echo, that little white dome there. And as you can see, we're not too terribly far away from the radar site, which means we're getting a little bit of a better view of what those winds are looking like as they get closer to the region. Again, there's the view from downtown Ozark. Things looking pretty quiet from now, but that very front edge of that line getting very, very close to your area, so we should start to see things start to pick up pretty quickly on that camera within about the next 5 minutes or so. Take you back over to reflectivity. Rain is already coming down fairly heavily in Ozark. I think the one thing that will kind of keep Ozark away from some of those strongest winds, it's already been raining for much of the last probably about 30 minutes or so. You can see some of that rain extend farther off toward the east through Echo and over into Henry County. So it's going to probably keep the strongest of those winds off to your north. It's already passing off toward your north. So Ozark, heavy rain, gusty winds, lots of lightning, but for the most part, I think the strongest winds stay just off toward your north. The places that we're especially watching for the potential for some of those strong damaging winds is right along this Dale and Barber County line. And again, mentioning the potential for maybe a quick spin-up tornado, it's going to be in these little features that kind of look like this. Some of these little kinks within the leading edge of that line. It's not a guarantee, but if we're going to see a quick spin-up tornado, it's going to be right there within those features. So not saying there's a tornado on the ground, but starting to see some of those features that could produce a quick spin-up tornado for places right around Blue Springs. Obviously, you're under a severe thunderstorm warning. These storms are already starting to move close to your area. We want to treat these with very, very similar respect to what we would a tornado warning. Just make sure you obviously get inside and get as close to the center of your home as possible. Let's get as far away from those outdoor walls and windows as possible. Ride this out for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be done with at least some of the gustiest winds after this line moves through the region. It's kind of in a couple of different segments. We'll very quickly go back to a little bit of a wider view of satellite and radar very quickly, and just kind of give you a view of what we're seeing all across the region. Two different complexes of storms. The first one now moving through the northern and central portions of the region, stretching from Geneva County through Coffee, Dale, and up into Barber County. Some heavier rain coming down in Dothan, farther off toward the north and the east from there. Headland, Abbeville, Newville, and eventually up toward Eufaula. You're seeing some of that heavier rain. You're seeing some gusty winds. You're seeing quite a bit of lightning as well. But still, for the most part, the highest threat for strong winds, at least for right now, pretty much going to be from the northern portions of Dale County northward through Barber County as that first line of storms races off toward the east. Then farther back off toward the west, I'm particularly concerned with this bowing segment that's farther back off toward the west, now starting to move out of the southwest corner of Alabama and into the western portions of the Florida Panhandle. It pretty quickly moved its way through Mobile, now starting to approach Pensacola. Earlier in the morning, there was already reports, or at least within the damage threats, within the warnings, within the severe thunderstorm warnings, as those get issued, the threat along this main line has seen some wind gusts as high as 80 miles per hour. So I'm particularly concerned here over the southern half of the region. As this Boeing segment starts to move into the region, I think we could start to see some of those wind speed estimates, at least as far as radar goes. Some of those could definitely jump up as high as 80 miles per hour. So that's something we'll continue to keep an eye on as that moves eastward into the region. For right now, our concern kind of right off the bat here is for right over basically Barber County. That's where we're seeing some of the strongest winds at the moment, and at times as we get closer and closer to the radar site, some of those wind gusts that have been sampled by the radar has been as strong as about 75 or 80 miles per hour. Still seeing some of those little kinks that are popping up kind of in the flow. We'll pop up velocity right quick. We'll do storm relative velocity. And yeah, there are a couple locations where we may see a little bit of very, very quick rotation here in the northern portions of Dale County. I think if it does produce a tornado, it will be very, very brief. But those are the kind of areas that you're going to have to watch here for potentially a quick spin-up tornado. And again, this entire line of storms is moving off toward the east at 65 miles per hour. So this is moving very quickly. Heads up in Clopton. Not saying that we do have a spin-up tornado on the ground. We don't even have a tornado warning in effect, but some of those looks on velocity starting to take a little bit of that look that you would normally see along the leading edge of a line of storms when we could potentially see a quick spin-up tornado. Regardless of spin-up tornado, there's some strong winds that are on the way that'll be in your region probably within about the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. And we'll take a look at some of those wind speeds right along the leading edge of that line. Hopefully things starting to come down a little bit, not seeing as much in the way of those 60 or 70 mile per hour wind gusts, but definitely at the very least could see some gusty winds as high as probably around 50 miles per hour. That's definitely some good news. It's less than the 70 or 80 mile per hour wind speeds that we were seeing, at least from radar, while this was farther off toward the east. But nonetheless, things going to start to get pretty rough pretty quickly for Clopton and places in the northeast corner of Dale County. And the place I have highlighted here, that's pretty much our main concern, at least for right now, for about the next 30 minutes or so, pretty much anywhere along, basically from Skipperville to Blue Springs eastward. That's where our primary threat is for some strong damaging winds. There's some other areas of stronger winds farther off toward the north, further along into the central portions of Barber County. Clayton likely seeing some of those gusty winds. Looks like that's now pushed through Clio. But again, farther off toward the south, far northern portions of Dale County, basically from Skipperville to Blue Springs. If you live anywhere due east of that, that includes Clopton, you guys are going to be next in line to see some of these stronger gusty winds as they roll through the region. And again, we're keeping an eye on the potential for any sort of spin-up tornado. Right now, not seeing a whole bunch of evidence that we're for sure seeing one, but right along that leading edge of those storms, it's places like that that kind of have those features, that kind of have that look to them, that may very, very quickly produce a spin-up tornado. Regardless of spin-up tornado, right in these areas where some of these lighter greens push a little bit farther off toward the east than some of the rest of the line back behind it. It's right within the middle portions of that little segment that pushes out a little bit farther. That's where we could see some locally stronger winds. Looks like things are starting to wind down just a little bit, but it may be because we're crossing over to the other side of the radar site, and the winds, at least the way the radar is analyzing these winds, it may bring it down a little bit more than it actually is. Overall, the threat and all is still about the same. 65, 70, 75 mile per hour winds right along this leading edge of the wind. Some of those gusts could, in a couple locations, reach as high as maybe 75 or 80 miles per hour. That's not looking as potent now as it did when it made its way through Troy, and we saw several of those queries as high as 80 or 85 miles per hour, but we could definitely still see some gusty winds right along this leading edge of storms. We'll go back to radar reflectivity right quick, and Yeah, again, we're getting a little bit close to the radar site, so this may get a little bit kind of noisier to see as you get a little bit closer to the radar site. But right there in the northeast corner of Dale County, just a little bit of a curl, a little bit of a hook. Not to say that we will get a spin-up tornado out of that, but that's definitely going to be something that bears watching as it continues eastward over into Clopton. Clopton, you're already within a severe thunderstorm warning as this line of storm starts to move closer to your region. We've already seen some wind gusts, at least radar indicated, that could be as high as 70 or 75 miles per hour at the surface. So you should already be indoors. You should already be away from any exterior walls or windows. But we're going to continue to watch that as it gets a little bit closer to Clopton. Hopefully it moves through without issue, but it's a couple of locations that have some features that we would normally see that would potentially produce a very, very quick spin-up tornado. I think if it does spin up a tornado, it would be very weak, but that's something that we'll continue to keep an eye on there in Clopton as that continues to very quickly race off toward the east. That's kind of the good thing with all of this. These storms are very, very quickly moving off toward the east at around 65 miles per hour. And while that's a good thing, we get these storms through the region fairly quickly for us. Because these storms are moving so quickly off toward the east, that's a big reason why we're seeing some of those stronger winds as well. Business starting to pick up. Bearfield Crossroads now into Clopton. You're seeing a lot of that heavy rain, and this will continue to move off toward the east pretty quickly at around 60 to 65 miles per hour. So next in line here, we're now talking about the southern portions of Barber County, northern portions of Henry County, Baker Hill, and then down Highway 431 into Abbeville, probably within about the next 10-15 minutes or so. You're already seeing some of that heavy rain, some gusty winds, and some frequent lightning already at the moment. But as this leading line of storms moves eastward toward your region, you'll really start to see those winds start to pick up. You'll see the rain pick up once again. You'll see some of that lightning pick up as well. So it's already storming in places like Abbeville, Baker Hill, over towards Shorterville, but things are going to pick up a bit more as this leading line of storms continues to move eastward closer to the region. Again, want to back out a little bit more once again, do a bit more of a reset. A couple different areas that we're watching. The first one is this first complex of storms that's now starting to head over into the eastern portions of the region. Barber County, Dale County, the far western portions of Houston County, and then the far northern to northeastern portions of Geneva County. You're seeing the leading edge of this first complex of storms. It's storming pretty good elsewhere farther off toward the east, especially over the northeast corner of Houston County. That's kind of our first area of concern that'll move its way through the region. And then farther back off toward the west, the second Boeing segment may feature another round of damaging winds. Zach, I saw you catching my attention. What have you got?
Yeah, Zach, so just ran across a report from a spotter, but I guess it was sent to maybe EMA, of a tree that fell into a house in Elba near the hospital and has ruptured the gas line. Now, I don't know how official it is, but it really wouldn't surprise me. And also, there was another one that I came across here.
Is that on the tree down on a house in Elba? Is that, you saw that on NWS chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually that's EMA directors and media and National Weather Service workers that are all a part of that. So I'd be willing to bet that's probably a pretty good, a pretty solid, a pretty accurate report there.
Yeah, and there was another one. Whenever that main band of wind went through the Troy area, the airport there picked up a 54 knot gust, so that's roughly 60 miles per hour. So what we were seeing is pretty accurate.
Yeah, and we saw that as it started to move through Troy University. We had the camera pulled up there in Troy University, and there was one moment in particular where the winds really, really started to pick up fairly intensely to the point where they very momentarily lost power. And that's another thing that we're going to be dealing with as some of these stronger storms move through the region. You saw it there in Troy where the power momentarily went out. We're probably going to be dealing with very widespread power outages. Zach, I don't know if you can pull that up on that computer off to the side of if we can try to get some power outage reports pulled up. I know there's some different websites that we can pull up to get power outages checked, or anybody that's kind of behind the scenes that's a little bit more hands-free and can be a little bit more readily available to check that stuff. But we can start to get some power outage reports. That'd be great. It's probably just beginning, so we're just starting to get those first few reports, but I would not be terribly surprised if we have a pretty good string of power outage reports stretching from Crenshaw County all the way over into Pike, or all the way over into Barber County as well. I want to make sure we keep an eye a little bit closer to home as well. Dothan looks like the rain's starting to wind down for now, but the leading edge of that first complex of storms now starting to move into the far western portions of the county. I would not be surprised if there's a little bit of hail coming down here over the northeast corner of Houston County. This is to the north of Highway 84 up toward Haleburg. I think there could be some hail coming down in some of that since that is a cell that developed out ahead of the line. And then our main leading line of storms now starting to move its way through Newton and now starting to get a little bit closer to places like Midland City, Headland, and then within the next few minutes we'll see those storms move into Dothan as well. We'll take a very quick look at what we're seeing out of some of those wind speeds along the leading edge of that line. I don't anticipate these to be too terribly concerning, and yeah, that's probably not what's actually happening. We're probably seeing some gusty winds, probably not rising to the level of damaging winds, but I kind of doubt we're seeing some wind speeds only as high as 16 to 20 miles per hour right along the leading edge of that line. So that's something we'll continue to keep an eye on. But again, just move through Grimes, Pinkard, Midland City. You've already seen some of that rain. That's now some of this heavier rain along the leading edge of this line now starting to get a little bit closer to the northwest side of town. There's a lot of shopping centers and all that stuff here on the northwest side of the circle. You're starting to see some of that heavier rain. What was that, Kenneth? Okay, yeah. So we have a power outage map. Let's go ahead and pull that up. Yeah, looking at the legend there, looks like, I mean, obviously it looks like a handful of power outages. About 100 in Ozark. Okay, so yeah, so we're just starting to get some of our first few power outage reports coming in, and it's in an area that it doesn't necessarily surprise me that we've seen some power outages stretching from, looks like Enterprise through Daleville, through Midland City, and headed toward Headland. Is there any farther off toward the north, stretching from like Troy through Crenshaw County and then over into Barber County? Looks like we have a few. That's going to be over closer to Barber County. Looks like we're not seeing too terribly much, at least just yet, around Troy, Banks, Brundage, and then farther off toward the east. But I would definitely expect to see some of those power outage reports kind of fill in as we head throughout the morning. For right now, some of the strongest storms, at least close to Dothan, now starting to move into the northwest side of the city. You've already seen some heavy rain, some frequent lightning, some gusty winds already this morning, and now we're starting to see the first of two different lines of storms start to make its way closer to Dothan. However, some of the strongest winds is now moving through the northern portions of Henry County. Heads up Abbeville. Rain's already coming down at a pretty good clip. You're probably already seeing some gusty winds, some frequent lightning, but this is that main leading line of that first complex of storms. And again, I continue to point out a little bit of a curve, a little bit of a kink in the flow. Not to say we will definitely see a spin-up tornado, but that's usually kind of a similar structure that we would look at if we were to get a very quick spin-up tornado. Not really seeing anything that jumps out at me as far as rotation goes that would suggest that we have a spin-up tornado on the ground, but it's something that could spin up very quickly, very, very quickly produce some damage, and then continue to push off toward the east. And as we continue to get some of those new radar scans in, you do get a little bit more of a curl there. So this is something we're going to have to watch pretty closely over the next several minutes as that continues to get a little bit closer to Abbeville. Let's see if we can loop this a couple of times right quick and see how this kind of develops. It's kind of a straight line of storms as it's moving through the northwest corner of Dale County. But as it continues to push eastward, we get a little bit of a surge out ahead of that, starting to head toward Highway 431 just to the south and the west of Abbeville. But usually when those winds kind of surge ahead to the south, it's a little bit slower to the north. You can kind of generate a little bit of rotation there on the north side of that from where that starts to push through a little bit quicker than the rest of it. It's why we're getting a little bit of just a little bit of almost like a hook-like shape here just to the south and the west of Abbeville. Likely some very strong winds now starting to cross over Highway 431. Probably some of the strongest winds along the leading edge of that line will be right here where these winds are surging ahead. Some of those could be as high as 60, 65, 70 miles per hour. And in addition to that, we'll have to just watch for the potential for a quick spin-up tornado. We'll try to see if we can get anything overly useful. Yeah, 55, probably, 55, 60 miles per hour. So definitely some gusty winds about to move across Highway 431 through Caps just to the south of Abbeville. That's the first thing that we'll keep an eye on, is those gusty winds that are kind of surging out ahead of the line. But another thing that we'll also have to watch out for, kind of with this little bit of a curl there within the radar. Would not be just totally surprised to see a spin-up tornado. Obviously, it would be hard to say, but definitely not a guarantee. But it's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as it starts to move closer to Abbeville. And again, the message pretty similar for Abbeville. Don't want you to necessarily take tornado warning precautions, but we want to treat this with very similar respect as we would a severe thunderstorm, as we would a tornado warning, just because of the kind of the energy that we have in the atmosphere. It will not take very much to start to bring 60, 75, 70 mile per hour wind gusts down to the surface. And that's definitely enough to do a little bit of damage and cause some power outages. So we want to make sure that while we're not definitely seeing tornado-like damage, we are seeing some gusty winds that could definitely do a little bit of damage. Zach, I saw you get my attention. What have you got?
Yeah, so you just mentioned it wouldn't take much to bring those stronger winds to the surface. Well, I've been checking our neighbors west of here in the Mobile area, and it seems like that's what they're doing. They're bringing those 60 to 70 mile per hour winds at times down to the surface. I know Bay Minette's not our area, but there was a 71 mile per hour gust there. That same bow echo that's moving through the Mobile area is pushing into at least our panhandle counties here. So if this holds the momentum, then round two is on the way, and it's going to be packing a punch as well. But I did want to just kind of show you this curve in the line, or this curve in the storm right here, just east of the Ashford and Pansy area, just south of Columbia. You got this curve here, and that's also co-located with some very broad rotation. It looks a little better. Well, there's storm relative velocity. You could see that little red touching the green there, and that's right there within that curved area. So we'll have to watch that for something to tighten up or spin up as that moves further toward Early County. But I think that might be the only concerning one right now. Of course, there's a few brightening in the colors around southwest of Dothan, southwest of Rehoboth, but so far all of that looks to be behaving. But yeah, this thing is not done yet. This system is this is round one. And then just to zoom out and show you here what we've been talking about, round two, and I'll circle it so we can actually see what is round two here. Well, it's about to move into Covington County, and it's got a lot of lightning in it, a lot of heavy rainfall, and these winds are still producing maybe some damage in spots. So we're not done yet, Zach.
No, we're just getting started in a few locations, especially over the southern half of the region. Still continuing to keep my eye on this little area about to move into Abbeville. It has a look that you would look at, that you would see whenever you could get a brief spin-up tornado, not seeing any sort of indications that we're particularly concerned with a tornado touching down, but it kind of does have that little bit of a look. This heavy rain should be moving into Abbeville now, so radar is just a snapshot, a singular snapshot in time, and we get these little snapshots about 3 minutes or so at a time. So probably by the time this next scan comes in, this is now pushing off toward the east of Abbeville. So if you're in Abbeville, it's probably just raining like crazy, lots of lightning, and you're probably dealing with some fairly strong winds as well as that starts to kind of move through. And as we mentioned earlier, the strongest winds are going to be on the south side of where that really starts to surge through here. So now to the south of Abbeville, east of Highway 431, east of Caps, there's a couple of areas where radar picking up on a little bit stronger winds. Some of those could be as high as around 60 miles per hour or so, and We'll just take a quick sampling to see what's going on there. Yeah, around 40, 50 miles per hour. So definitely some gusty winds, borderline damaging winds that may be able to push down a weak tree or so, but definitely some of the strongest winds right now along that first line of storms is going to be right here just to the south of Abbeville in Henry County, and that will continue to race pretty quickly off toward the east. Storm motion on this has been around 60, 65 miles per hour. We've been on the air for probably around maybe an hour or so, maybe longer than that. Time kind of flies when you're up here, but in that very short period of time, let's say it has been an hour, we started covering this right as it started to move into the western portions and central portions of Crenshaw and Covington County. Now it's starting to approach, that's Alabama-Georgia state line there. So these storms are very, very quickly moving through the region. That's definitely some good news that this is moving through quickly. We're not going to be dealing with as much of a flooding threat or anything like that with these storms, but kind of the other side of that is, yes, these storms are moving through quickly. It's because they're producing some pretty gusty winds as well, some pretty strong winds as well. And there's kind of we'll just kind of give you a wider view of what the winds look like all across the region. Some stronger winds here in the central portions of Henry County, just to the south of Abbeville. Looks like around Headland, seeing some of those gusty winds. Now starting to move into the central portions of Dothan. I can see the Dothan, one of our Dothan cameras, just kind of out of the corner of my eye, and definitely seeing some of that rain pick up. Lots of lightning as well. And looks like that wind's starting to pick up as well. It looks like we're seeing some of those stronger winds as well, farther off toward the south. Something that just caught my eye is down here in the kind of in the western portions of tornado warning. Yeah, I would just notice this here, and there's the EAS alerts that some of you may be having on your phone. I just saw this just to the east of Taylor here, just barely to the southeast of Taylor, north of Rehoboth, to the east of State County Road 59. I just noticed this area of rotation that has very quickly spun up here to the southwest of Taylor. I would imagine that's what we're looking at here. Dothan, you are included within this tornado warning, but I think the overall threat for a tornado stretches now just to the southeast of Taylor, headed toward the National Peanut Festival, crossing over Highway 231, and then down into Keaton's. I just noticed that right as we zoomed out to take a little bit of that wider view of velocity. I noticed that pick up very quickly, and then it was almost instantly that we saw that tornado warning spin up. So now we kind of switch gears a little bit. Obviously, we're still keeping an eye on the damaging wind threat, but now things are a little bit more. We're having to kind of switch our focus a little bit. Area of rotation now moving to the southeast of Taylor. This is to the northeast of Rehoboth, the northeastern corner of Rehoboth. You're seeing where that rotation is. This crosses over very close to the Peanut Festival fairgrounds within probably about the next 2 to 3 minutes, then continues farther off toward the south and the east toward Keaton's. I'm not sure if this is radar indicated or not. We can pull up correlation coefficient. There's a little bit of a lowering there, but I don't think that's what we're worried about here. No, I don't think it is. I think it's going to be this rotation up here around Taylor. I'll try to see if I can pull up some of the warning information. Radar indicated rotation. Yeah, severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located over Taylor. So it's going to be this little area of rotation right here, and it was one just very quick area of rotation that has very, very quickly spun up here over in the west central portions of Houston County, pretty much right over Piney Grove Road, Helms Road, a couple of those locations that seeing this rotation pass over their region right now. And within the next minute or so, this crosses over Highway 231, very, very close to the National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds. I can hear the tornado sirens going off outside. Again, if you're in downtown Dothan, you're included in the tornado warning. You're hearing the sirens go off. This is to the south of downtown Dothan. So anybody in downtown Dothan, yes, you're included in the tornado warning, but the actual threat of a tornado is to your south. Taylor is back behind me, back toward the north and the west. There's the National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds right there along Highway 231. It's going to be this area of rotation that's crossing over Helms Road, now starting to head toward Moffett Road, about to cross over Highway 231. That's where our rotation is, and that's where our concern is for a potential tornado. Looks like here just to the south of the National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds to just pretty much right over Leon Road, looks like Iris Road, Eddins Road, Middleton Road. Within the next minute or two, this is over your area as well. No sort of confirmation that we have a tornado on the ground with this. This is still radar indicated rotation, but it's something that spun up pretty quickly there. We were watching this for a damaging wind threat, and now we've had to switch gears here and take a little bit more of a look at the potential for a tornado. Again, as of this radar scan, this is pretty much right over Highway 231, just to the south of the National Peanut Festival. Again, if you're in downtown Dothan, you're included in the tornado warning. Sirens are going off. I can hear them already just outside from here in the studio. This is south of you. This is to the south of the National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds, crossing over Highway 231, again, Iris Road, Eddins Road, and down to Flournoy Road, Moore Road. Those are going to be some of your next locations that within the next 3 to 5 minutes, this will start to move into your region. Anybody living down here in the Keatons community, you are next in line. Probably within about the next 3 to 5 minutes, you'll see this rotation come very, very close to your area. Continually checking to make sure that we don't have any sort of debris ball. Obviously, our debris tracker, a very, very good tool to use in this situation, particularly in a situation where it's still dark outside. 4 o'clock Friday morning, still dark outside, obviously, so we're not going to be able to get a whole lot of visual on this storm, so we'll have to use our debris tracker. If in the event that a tornado touches down, we would use this debris tracker to see whether or not we actually have a tornado on the ground and producing damage. The good news is we're not seeing anything right now on that debris tracker that would suggest that we have a tornado on the ground, which is definitely some good news. There's where your rotation is now moving over Eddins Road, Kayla Lane, Hodgesville Road, and over toward Hooper Cherry Road. Again, radar just a snapshot in time, and with how fast these storms are moving off toward the east, this is probably over some of your areas right now. So again, Kayla Lane, Hodgesville Road, Hooper Cherry Road, Sowell Road, George Road, and Willie Varnum Road over here in the kind of the central portions of Houston County, now to the east of Highway 231. There's Highway 231 here. National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds is back behind this now. Dothan is well off toward the north of us. So this is to the south of Dothan, but anybody living pretty much from the National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds down toward Keatons and then farther east over toward Willie Varnum Road, that is where we're seeing the rotation. Again, continuing to keep an eye on the debris tracker. Fortunately, still not seeing anything that would suggest that we have a tornado on the ground. Definitely some good news. Hopefully that continues to still be the case. But yeah, this is a tornado warning that has very, very quickly spun up here. And we've mentioned this was possible. We were tracking that storm in Abbeville for the potential for a quick spin-up tornado. And we were able to get one spin up quickly enough farther off toward the south in Houston County that thankfully we were able to get a warning out on it, and we are now tracking that for you pretty much right around Keatons. I will say Cottonwood is just barely off screen to the south. I think you're included in the tornado warning. I want you to take on those tornado warning plans as this continues to drop off toward the south and the east. But for right now, the main threat for the moment is north of Cottonwood. If this takes a little bit more of a jog toward the south, Cottonwood, we would be a little bit more concerned with this, but for right now, this is to the north of Cottonwood, north of Keatons, and it looks like that rotation trying to get a little bit more well-defined here, pretty much right over Hooper Cherry Road. Okay, so we're receiving a report that there may be a tornado on the ground, unconfirmed. We'll continue to check all of the resources that we have, like the debris tracker, to see whether or not the tornado is actually on the ground. Starting to get a couple of pixels that are starting to drop a little bit right where that rotation is. And I will say the rotation here is starting to get a bit more well-defined. Right over Hooper Cherry Road, headed toward George Road. So I would not be totally surprised if we have potentially a weak tornado on the ground here, right along Hooper Cherry Road, headed toward George Road, Willie Varnum Road, you're next in line. We'll have to wait and see whether or not we get any sort of confirmation elsewhere that we have a tornado on the ground. not seeing any sort of drop in the debris tracker at the moment, but we do know at any minute we could see a drop in that correlation
Just treat
coefficient.
it like one.
What's that?
Just treat it like one.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of whether or not there is a tornado on the ground, we want to treat this like there is a tornado on the ground. So anybody farther off toward the east here, Willie Varnum Road, Gene Terry Road, along State Route 53 over toward Fowler Road, farther off toward the east, while we may not have a tornado on the ground, that rotation is really kind of ramped up a little bit over about the past minute or so. So if you're living anywhere here in this southeast corner of Houston County, and again, man, that thing is really starting to ramp up a bit more just north of Briar Mills Road.
Wrong.
Yeah, Zach's showing me a debris tracker, and it looks like yeah, there you go. Yeah, this is a tornado on the ground now. We're starting to get that drop in the correlation coefficient, or the debris tracker, that matches up pretty much right where that velocity is. So now we're dealing with a confirmed tornado on the ground to the north of Briar Hills Road, and we have a confirmed tornado on the ground. And, okay. Yeah. Okay, all right. Anyway, tornado on the ground. This is very, very close to Briar Hills Drive, crossing over Willie Varnum Road. This will continue eastward over State Route 53. There's your drop in the debris tracker, all the indication that you need that we have a tornado on the ground in the southern portions of Houston County. This is to the north of Cottonwood. This is to the south of downtown Dothan. This is southeast of the National Peanut Festival, and this will continue to move off toward the east fairly quickly here. And obviously, if you're living anywhere in the southern portions of Houston County, and you're within the tornado warning. So Cottonwood, this will come close to you. I think it misses you to the north, but if you're in Cottonwood, let's go ahead and take those tornado warning precautions. Get to the lowest floor of your home, as far away from outdoor walls and windows as possible. But we were watching this. We didn't initially see a drop that would suggest we have a tornado on the ground, but now starting to move into the northern portions of Cottonwood, right around the Cottonwood Dragway. You can see the drop in the correlation coefficient or the debris tracker right here, that area of yellow just to the west of Cottonwood Dragway, crossing over. Let's see what highway that is. I don't know if we can get that to pull up. County Road 33. It's pretty much, as of the last scan, that's where the confirmed tornado, radar confirmed tornado, is on the ground, and it's continuing to pretty quickly move off toward the south and the east. If you live anywhere out here on the north side of Cottonwood, out around Cottonwood Dragway, if you're not already within that tornado safe place, get there now. Confirmed tornado on the ground, crossing over County Road 33, and it will continue to move off toward the south and east very, very quickly. Storm motion's very, very fast on this, so anybody right around Cottonwood Dragway to the northeast side of Cottonwood, it's very, very quickly moving off toward the south and the east and headed your direction. Here's a look at some of these more local roads that are farther off toward the south and the east from where this radar confirmed tornado is. Right here where you see these yellows and greens, that's where the debris tracker is picking up on a radar confirmed tornado. So crossing over Gene Terry Road, County Road 55, over to Burl Lee Road, Edwin Reynolds Road, Nobles Road. If you live anywhere out here in any of those, along any of those streets that I just mentioned, if it's not over you right now, it will be there within the next minute or two. This is very, very quickly moving off toward the south and the east. And again, we have a radar confirmed tornado, tornado on the ground here in the southern portions of Houston County. Dothan, you are not included within this tornado warning. Cottonwood is. Anybody living on the northern and the northeastern side of Cottonwood needs to be taking those tornado safety precautions. And then anybody living farther off toward the north, toward Cottonwood Dragway, again, radar confirmed tornado on the ground, Gene Terry Road, County Road 55, Nobles Road, Burl Lee Road, Edwin Reynolds Road. If it's not over your location right now, it will be likely within seconds as this continues to move off toward the east at around 40 miles per hour. We've seen some pretty fast storm motions out of this. There's the new scan. As of this scan, the tornado has now crossed over Gene Terry Road. It's about to cross over County Road 55 and head toward Burl Lee Road. Then farther down the road, Womack Road, South Rocky Creek Road, September Road, and then continuing, we'll try to pull this even farther off toward the east here. Again, Womack Road, Hickory Grove Road, September Road, Rocky Creek Road, Burl Lee Road, County Road 55. If you live along any of those roads, you'll have a radar-confirmed tornado moving through your location within about the next minute or two. Hopefully this is the only tornado warning that we have. Zoom out right quick. There is a tornado warning over in Okaloosa County for Crestview. Very, very similar situation there where we have a spin up along the line. But right now, the far more pressing issue, a radar-confirmed tornado that is on the ground in the southern portions of Houston County, just crossed over Nobles Road, headed toward County Road 55, Burl Lee Road, Womack Road, South Rocky Creek Road, September Road, Hickory Grove Road. If you live along any of those locations, there's a radar-confirmed tornado. If it's not over you right now, it will be there within a matter of seconds, just with how fast this storm is moving through the area. I'll zoom out a bit. This is moving through the far northern portions of Cottonwood, so if you live closer to downtown Cottonwood or anywhere to the south and the east of Cottonwood, I think you're going to be okay. But if you're living here over the northern portions of Cottonwood, especially up toward Cottonwood Dragway, this tornado is moving through your area, and this will continue to move off toward the east and the southeast at around 40 to 45 miles per hour. Again, Womack Road, South Rocky Creek Road, September Road, Hickory Road, and farther off toward the east, we have a radar-confirmed tornado on the ground. Some good news here. The debris ball does not look as concentrated as it did when it was farther back off toward the north and the west. That's some good news. It's not quite a confirmation yet that we don't have a tornado still on the ground, but now over to the east of Cottonwood, still seeing a little bit of debris hanging around. And this continues to move off toward the east, starting to look a little bit less likely that we have a tornado on the ground, but we've had a tornado on the ground. So if you're living anywhere out here over Hickory Grove Road or Guy Branch Road or farther off toward the east, still be within that tornado warning safety plan. Lowest level of your home, as far away from those outdoor walls and windows as possible. Get in a closet, get in a bathroom, take blankets, take pillows, put on helmets, whatever you need to do. If you live farther off toward the south and the east, keep staying within that tornado safe place as this continues to move off toward the south and the east. Zach, do you have anything?
I was just going to say that near the Rehoboth area, a lot of power outages happening. 450 power outages. That's a lot for a little community like that. I mean, you know, it's little communities that can take a hit like that and, you know, it just ruins the rest of the day.
Yeah, for sure. So around 450 power outages here around Rehoboth. Not completely surprising to see as these storms move through the region, but still probably the most pressing issue right now, a radar-confirmed tornado moving through the south central portions of Houston County. Cottonwood is back behind me toward the south and the east. This will miss Cottonwood to the north and east. However, anybody living along that northern to northeastern part of Cottonwood, up toward Cottonwood Dragway, you had this radar-confirmed tornado move over your region. Some good news that things are starting to look not quite probably as menacing. I don't know, that's probably a word for it, but the debris ball that we were seeing on our debris tracker, not as well defined now as it was over about the past 5 or 10 minutes or so. That's good news for this moment, but for people that live farther back off toward the north and the west that have seen this tornado move through, it looks like we've once again dealt with another tornado that has moved very, very close to Cottonwood. I'll zoom out a little bit more, kind of give you a little bit of an idea of where we're talking about here. So there's Cottonwood, there's Ashford, there's Gordon. This is to the south and the west of Gordon, starting to move into the southeast corner of Houston County. I can still hear some of the tornado sirens going off in Dothan. Downtown Dothan, you are no longer included in the tornado warning. This stayed off toward your south anyway. The primary area that we're watching now is within the southeast corner of Houston County, now to the east of Cottonwood. Regardless of tornado or not, to the east of Cottonwood, there's our area of rotation right here just to the south of County Road 8, approaching County Road 15 and County Road 81. That's where our rotation is located. To the south and the east of where that, to the south and the west rather, of where that radar or where that rotation is located, there's probably some gusty winds that will eventually make its way across County Road 81 and County Road 75, eventually over toward Spring Hill Road. So we may be transitioning back away more or less from a tornado threat and kind of transitioning back toward a damaging wind threat. You can see some of those brighter colors showing up to the south and the west of where radar is indicating that we at the very least have rotation. Not sure if we still have a tornado on the ground. So the primary concern is going to be where that rotation is here just to the south and the east of Cottonwood Dragway. But in addition to that, off toward the south and west of where that rotation is, probably some damaging winds that could make its way toward South County Road 81 over the next handful of minutes. We'll go back over to our debris tracker. Still not anything that really jumps out at me. Watching that area, but it's not really very well located with where we are seeing that rotation. In fact, I'll put my finger right where we have that lowering the correlation coefficient, pull up the velocity, and you can see this is located within an area of some gustier winds. Our rotation sitting about right there. So I have reason to believe that we don't have a tornado on the ground anymore, but regardless of that, anybody that's still living out here in the southeast corner of Houston County still have a tornado warning in effect. At least I think we still do. So I guess it turns the warning polygons off when we look at debris tracker. But anyway, nonetheless, still tracking at least the potential for a tornado over the southeast corner of Houston County. Things not looking quite as bad as they were probably about 10 to 15 minutes ago, but we definitely still have some rotation in the southeastern corner of Houston County. Eventually this continues eastward over into Crosby. Let's see if we can help you identify some stuff. There's Highway 84. Gordon, you were included in the tornado warning, but the main area of rotation is off toward your south and the east. Probably the next pretty good sized community that is in line for this would be Crosby, as this continues off toward the east and the southeast at around 45 miles per hour. Looks like we may still have a little bit of rotation here, about to cross over County Road 81. And again, this continues to move off toward the east at around 45 to 50 miles per hour or so. We'll pull up that debris tracker once again. Not really seeing all that much that really jumps out at me that says that we have a tornado on the ground. But if we were to have a tornado, it would be just to the northeast of Grangeburg, just to the west of Crosby. And again, not seeing anything on the debris tracker that would suggest that we have a tornado on the ground. But with how quickly that tornado spun up and how quickly business really kind of picked up, at least from a tornado standpoint, while we may not have a tornado on the ground right now, it may not take very much for this storm to cycle and produce another one. Looks like we're just starting to get that next scan in as far as the velocity goes. Again, this is to the east of Cottonwood. This is to the north of Grangeburg. This is to the west of Crosby right now along South County Road 81, now moving to the east of County Road 81. Anybody living along Spring Hill Road headed toward Crosby, just to the west of Crosby rather, still a little bit of rotation showing up there on radar, so we're continuing to track the potential for a tornado still moving through the southeast corner of Houston County. You may still have tornado sirens going off elsewhere in the county. If you're in Taylor, if you're in Rehoboth, if you're in Dothan, if you're in Kinsey, anywhere over in the western portions of Houston County, you may still hear tornado sirens going off, but you are no longer included within this tornado warning. This is just for the southeast corner of Houston County. So there is the Alabama and Florida state line right here, just to the south of Grangeburg. And then to zoom out even further, just kind of give you an idea of where we're talking about here within Houston County again. Alabama-Florida state line is here. Alabama-Georgia state line is here. There's Highway 84 running back up toward Dothan, and our rotation is going to be, of those three locations, closest to the Florida and the Georgia state line, to the northeast of Grangeburg, just to the west of Crosby, and this is continuing to move off toward the east at around 45 or 50 miles per hour. So again, locations that are living just to the west of Crosby. I'm trying to make sure we don't have any sort of updates here as far as this warning goes, but at the very least for right now, anybody living just to the east of Crosby, so Spring Hill Road, County Road 8 starting to run into Crosby. You're going to be some of those next locations that sees this area of rotation move over the region. The good news is this rotation is not as strong now as it was about 10 to 15 minutes ago when this storm first produced the tornado, right after it crossed over Highway 231 there, right around the National Peanut Festival Fairgrounds. It crossed in between Cottonwood and the Cottonwood Dragway, and now starting to move off farther toward the east. County Road, I think that's County Road 81, there's a new scan, and again, things starting to look a little bit better, not quite as impressive as far as radar, or as far as the rotation goes, but again, with how quickly this storm spun up, it would not take very much for it to potentially spin up again and produce a tornado. Not seeing any sort of indications right now that it's going to do that, but we'll continue to monitor this until we can get that tornado warning to either expire or we can get it to cancel. Again, the good news is this rotation has got a bit more widespread, a bit more broad. It's not very tight and centralized like it was around 10 to 15 minutes ago when it crossed over Highway 231. So we may not be too terribly far away from washing our hands of this, but at least for right now, a tornado warning continues to remain in effect for the southeastern portions of Houston County, Crosby, Lucy, a couple of those next communities that are down the line as this area of rotation continues to move off toward the east. Regardless of rotation, regardless of potential tornado, there's some pretty strong winds moving through this far south central portion of Houston County. You can see that with some of those brighter reds. So again, regardless of tornado, to the south of Crosby, over toward Lucy, probably within the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, you'll at the very least get some locally stronger winds that'll make its way through the region. Continuing to scan my phone just to make sure we're not missing out on any other tornado warnings that have spun up. There is still one in effect for Okaloosa County around Crestview. That continues to move off toward the south and the east as well, but still the thing that we're monitoring the closest of all is still this leftover area of just broad rotation that continues to move through the southeast corner of Houston County, just to give you some of those more local roads that are kind of the next locations farther off toward the east. Again, at the very least, we got some gusty winds moving through. Tornado rotation not really looking as good. Mostly stronger winds now moving along County Road 4. Let's see, that is, what is this road here? That is Pilgrim Church Road as it crosses over County Road 4 and farther off toward the south toward the Florida state line. That's where we're seeing some of those gustiest winds. Fire Department Road, over toward Bristol Road, Oscar Helms Road. Those are going to be some of those next locations that at the very least see an increase in some of those gusty winds. Potentially a tornado, however, rotation starting to become more and more broad as this continues to move off toward the east. So we may not be too terribly far away from canceling this warning. The warning expires in 7 minutes. So either way, within about the next 5 to 7 minutes, we'll be done with this tornado warning and we'll be able to switch more so back toward a more broad view of what's going on elsewhere around the region. But at least at the moment, Long Road, County Road 4, Jordan Road, Fire Department Road, Oscar Helms Road, you guys, this is to the south of Crosby. You guys are going to be next in line for an increase in some of those gustier winds. Doesn't look like anything is tornadic. The rotation has really kind of broadened out over about the past 5 minutes or so. We'll take a look at the debris tracker. I don't think we're going to see anything. No, we do not. So no indications that we have a tornado on the ground, but we definitely had one on the ground about 15 to 20 minutes ago as it crossed over Highway 231. Near the Peanut Festival, crossed in between Cottonwood and the Cottonwood Dragway. And then once it did that, it kind of got a little bit more broad. That rotation got a little bit more broad, but still, regardless of that potential tornado, at the very least, we're seeing some pretty gusty winds here, right along the Alabama and the Florida state line in the south central portions of Houston County. I'll zoom out a little bit more. You can see that tornado warning polygon. It's still just this little bit of an S-shaped bend right there in the velocity. It's an area where something could spin up, but right now, at least at the moment, it does not look like there's anything that sticks out at me that says that we would have a tornado on the ground. You can see how close we're getting now to that eastern edge of the tornado warning. My guess is we'll see this expire in about 5 minutes or so. Looks like this expires at, what, 4:30 this morning? just to take a quick look. Yeah, 4:30 this morning, so we're about 5 minutes away from that, but this storm starting to approach that far eastern fringe of that tornado warning, so we should not be too far away from kind of putting this to bed, and then we're able to switch back over toward a more broad and a more widespread view of other storms that we're dealing with around the region. But yeah, things starting to look a little bit calmer there as far as the tornado potential goes, and it's definitely something that we would like to see. That's a storm that very, very quickly spun up just to the eastern side of Taylor and then continued to move off toward the south and the east, and now it looks like things finally starting to wind down there. I'll continue to keep an eye on that. Let's do a quick reset. We'll switch over to a bit of a wider view of satellite and radar and kind of give you an idea. Ooh, that zoomed in really close, didn't it? Let's see. So we'll start out with a little bit of a wider view of satellite and radar, and hopefully I won't zoom all the way in this time. That looks pretty good there. Looks like our two different complexes of storms kind of starting to come together a little bit. This was the first complex of storms that we were watching. As it moved into Crenshaw, Pike, and Barber County, now some of that's starting to extend farther off toward the south and east. That has now moved through Dothan, and very soon this first complex of storms will start to move out of our region. But we're still not entirely done just yet. You can see that second band of storms moving through portions of the Florida Panhandle. I noted that it has produced a tornado warning there in Crestview. We can take a very, very brief look at that as things continue to wind down. In the southeast corner of Houston County, there's still a little bit of broad rotation there. Nothing that is particularly concerning me as far as a tornado threat goes. And then as you can see, continuing farther off toward the south and the east, to the south of Definiak Springs, to the north of Freeport, you can see another one of those tornado warnings for a situation very, very similar to what we just saw in the southern portions of Houston County, something that very, very quickly spun up and produced some tornado damage. It looks like we may be seeing a very similar situation starting to head toward Highway 331 there south of Definiak Springs. But to once again zoom out and give you a little bit of a wider view of what we're looking at here. Overall, I think central portions of Crenshaw County, most of Pike County, most of Barber County, I think we're pretty good to say that your severe weather threat is starting to wind down. Southern portions of Crenshaw County and then Dale, Coffee, and Henry County southward, we will still have to watch for a little bit more of a lingering severe weather threat as the northern edge of this second Boeing segment of storms starts to move into the region. It's already pushed through Andalusia, now starting to make its way a little bit closer to the western portions of Geneva County, southwestern portions of Coffee County as well, and then also into the right around Definiak Springs area. We're starting to see that second round of stronger storms move through the region. Again, fortunately, all this stuff is moving through very quickly. We may only be dealing with this for maybe another 45 minutes to an hour before this very, very quickly pushes its way out of the region. And then the rest of the day today looks really nice. We'll get all this rain out of here. There may be some scattered showers and storms that kind of hang around throughout the rest of the morning. And as we head into the afternoon, I think our Friday afternoon looks really, really good for us around the region. But at least for right now, some fairly strong, some fairly intense storms continue to move their way through the portions of the region. This is starting to become a little bit more of a Florida Panhandle threat. We could still see some stronger storms here over toward the north in some of our Alabama counties. Again, southeastern Covington County, western Geneva County, into that far southwest corner of Coffee County. Zach, you got something?
Yeah, so you're kind of in that area, but there's actually TDS just southeast of Forest Highlands that formed a minute or two ago.
Probably very quickly.
About 3 or 4 minutes ago, and it's moving to the southeast, probably going to hit around the New Home area if that holds together. I know that's not quite our area, but it's so fringe that people probably know people in that area. So just kind of give them a heads up in the New Home area.
Okay.
And because that looks.
Where is this at?
That is southeast of Forest Highlands. It's on the western side of that tornado warning that is in Walton County.
Okay, so yeah, we're talking about this storm that's down here in Walton County to the south of Definiak Springs. There's a look at it on radar. This is well to the south of Interstate 10, but some people may know some people that live down this direction. There's a look at the storm relative velocity. Not really a lot that jumps out at me that would suggest that we have a tornado, but with the situation that we're in, it definitely would not take much to kind of produce a quick spin-up tornado. And I assume, Zach, that's going to be your potential TDS that we're looking at here over in the far western portions of Walton County. There's your debris tracker. We will switch this over to the velocity. And yeah, there is a little bit of an area where we have some winds moving away from the radar, some winds moving toward the radar, and when they meet in a really tight area like that, yeah, that's definitely a area where we're seeing a tornado on the ground. You can see that in the debris tracker, lowering within that debris tracker that pretty much lines up right with that very, very small area of rotation. So we very likely have another tornado on the ground. That is in Walton County. This is to the south of Interstate 10. There's Forest Highlands, there's Mossy Head, Alpine Heights, Definiak Springs, just barely off screen there to the east, but right here to the south of is that Florida Highway 280. Another lowering there in the correlation coefficient or the debris tracker that would suggest that we have another tornado on the ground. It is now 4:30, so that tornado warning in Houston County has been allowed to expire, and they have not reissued that farther off toward the south and the east. Definitely some good news there. We'll keep an eye on this tornado-producing storm that's over in Walton County. It's to the south of Interstate 10, but there may be a couple of people that know some people that live out this direction, and looks like that's starting to wind down pretty quickly as well. Looks like that may have spun up a tornado very quickly. Yeah, you can see it there. It starts to touch down just barely to the north of Florida Highway 280 there, just to the south of Forest Highlands, and it continued to carry off toward the south and the east. Now it looks like it's becoming a little bit more not as well defined, but it's going to be that very, very tight area of rotation. And even then, in that newest scan, things not looking quite as threatening there as they did just a few minutes ago, but it does look like we had a very brief tornado over the western portions of Jackson County to the south of Interstate 10. A tornado warning continues, but we're starting to really kind of lose a lot of the things that you would normally be concerned about whenever you're looking at a potential tornado situation. So let's do a little bit of a reset. There's a wider view of Doppler radar. First line of storms already moving through the southeastern portions of Houston County. Blakely over in Early County, some lightning really starting to pick up, some heavy rain, probably some gusty winds as well. That's also starting to move into the northwestern portions of Seminole County. Heavy rain coming down along and north of Interstate 10 up toward the Alabama and the Florida state line. That first round of rain now starting to push through Dothan, but we're still not quite done with those thunderstorms just yet. Farther back off toward the west, this is our second little complex of storms. And the good news is, at least for a lot of our Alabama counties, I think this second round of storms going to be a bit more of a Florida Panhandle concern than a Alabama county concern, but we will have to continue to watch right along the Alabama and the Florida state line, at least up into our Alabama counties. We could see a couple more of at least some gusty winds as the span of storms moves through. Hopefully we're kind of trailing off and we're winding down toward the end of this, particularly over in our Alabama counties, which is very nice. If we can go ahead and get this done and get this out of here before 5, 6 o'clock, one, we can have news for this morning as scheduled without a lot of interruptions from weather, but two, everybody can go about their morning commutes as normal. Given that there's not damage, then there's definitely a potential that we've seen some damage across the region, especially stretching from around Crenshaw County through Pike County and into Barber County. Some of those wind gusts picked up by radar as high as 70, 75, or 80 miles per hour. Does not mean that necessarily translated down to the surface, but when you're seeing that just barely off the ground, pretty close, decently close to the radar side, there's some pretty good evidence that we may have had some sort of swath of damaging winds across the northern portions of the region. But for right now, this is mostly a southern half of the Wiregrass kind of issue. Basically from Andalusia, from Enterprise, Dothan, kind of southward from there. I think that's where we'll see our largest threat for continuing severe weather over about the next hour, hour and a half, at least until we can get this line of storms pushed out of the region. Tornado warning for Walton County. It's south of Interstate 10. It had a tornado debris signature on it earlier. It pretty quickly kind of faded away, which again, that's what we expect to see as far as tornadoes go in a setup like this, is it very quickly spins up. They issue the warning, and then there's a pretty good chance that shortly after they issue the warning, the rotation kind of fades away and we lose that tornado threat. Not really seeing anything that jumps out at me as far as any sort of rotation or anything like that that would really suggest that we have a tornado on the ground. And again, looking at that debris tracker, not really anything that sticks out at me here to the south of Interstate 10, to the west of Highway 331, that would suggest that we have a tornado on the ground. So fortunately, things starting to wind down a little bit as far as a tornado threat goes after a very brief increase in that tornado threat, but we are still dealing with some gusty winds in many locations here as these storms continue to drop off toward the south and the east. Definiak Springs, you've got quite a bit of rain coming down, probably a lot of gusty winds, probably a lot of lightning as well, but that should pretty quickly continue to move off toward your south and the east. You can see all that heavy rain that's coming down in Definiak Springs. Ponce de Leon down toward Red Bay, closer to the radar site. You'll start to see some of those stronger winds move into your region as well. And then just kind of continuing eastward along Interstate 10, Caryville, Bonifay, Chipley, and eventually over into Cottondale and Mariana. You're starting to see the wind and the rain pick up pretty much right down along Interstate 10. We're going to try to get that Definiak Springs camera punched up. I'm sure that's probably a very, very active site. And
it's down.
Once we get that going, the
We don't have it.
Okay, so the Definiak Springs camera is down, but if it looks anything like it did in Troy earlier this morning, I can tell you, we got some heavy rain coming down. We got lots of lightning, probably almost consistent lightning as those stronger storms roll through. And at the very least, we have some gusty winds. Some of that could border along damaging winds as well. Just kind of continue to keep a little bit of a scan over everything else. We'll move farther back off toward the north. This is along that second Boeing segment. This is moving through places like Mobile earlier in the night. And now the northern portions of this line, is starting to move into the western portions of Geneva County, and eventually this heads over toward Coffee Springs and Geneva. Not sure if we're going to really be able to get a very good indication of what winds look like here, but definitely some gusty winds. Let's see if we can get the Fort Novacell site to come up, and then just taking a quick look at some of those wind speeds right along that line. Yeah, some gusty winds along the leading edge of that line, but the good news is some of the rain that we saw with that first complex of storms as it rolled through the region, probably kind of lessening the threat a little bit here over some of our Alabama counties, but we'll continue to watch this for the potential for some damaging winds. Hard to say. It looks like there's still a severe thunderstorm warning out for Geneva, Dale, Henry, Houston.
It's a giant warning.
Clay, yeah, it's one of those blanket warnings just kind of covering a large area as that leading line of storms moves through. Obviously, if you're up here in Dale County or into Henry County, yeah, you're probably seeing a little bit of rain, maybe some gusty winds. Even into Houston County, I would even go as far as to say even in Houston County. I'll switch over to reflectivity again. I mean, main line of storms is already pushed off towards your south. We may see some gusty winds with this second line of rain that's moving through the southern portions of Coffee County and into western Geneva County, but nothing that's overwhelmingly glaring as far as a potential severe weather threat goes. That's a view from downtown Dothan. Things starting to quiet down a little bit, as we would expect to see with that main line of storms now starting to push off toward our south and our east. Watch out for some heavy rain, some gusty winds, and a little bit of lightning as that second round of storms moves through. But kind of as we continue to press along here, most of our thread is now starting to move over into this far southeastern corner of the region as these two complexes of thunderstorms kind of consolidate together into more or less a single complex of storms. Walton County and then stretching up toward Interstate 10. Anybody along Interstate 10 from Definiak Springs all the way over into Mariana, boy, that is a wet and that is a rough go of it across the northern portions of of the Florida Panhandle here within the region. But this entire line of storms continues to more or less kind of race off toward the east and the southeast. Some of these, moving east at 70 miles per hour, just pulling up some of the warning text from this tornado warning to the south of Definiak Springs. That's moving east-southeast at 70 miles per hour. So we're moving interstate speeds as we continue to press off toward the south and the east. Definitely some good news. Again, we should be able to get these storms out of here before we get that morning commute underway, especially over our Alabama counties. Far northern portions of the region, Troy, over toward Eufaula into Laverne, Brantley, places like that, Jack, Clio, Echo, Shorterville. Don't want to quite count Abbeville out yet with this second line of storms that's still moving through, but really from about Brantley to Jack to Shorterville, northward from there, you'll continue to see some rain, maybe some gusty winds for the next little bit. But as far as severe weather goes, I think, again, from Brantley to Jack, Shorterville, northward from there, I think you're done with the severe weather threat. It looks like we'll definitely still see some rain as this complex still continues to move off toward the south and the east. But as far as damaging winds go, as far as frequent lightning, all of that stuff goes, northern counties of the region, I think it's pretty safe to say you're just about done with that severe weather threat. A little bit of a low-end severe weather threat continues for Geneva, Coffee, Dale, Henry, Houston, Clay, and Early counties in southeast Alabama and southwest Georgia, and still our primary focus as far as any sort of remaining potentially big severe weather threat is going to be right here along Interstate 10. So Definiak Springs, Bonifay, Caryville, Chipley, Mariana, and then back over toward Seminole County. That kind of anywhere along and south of that line, that's where we're still seeing a bit of a lingering, larger threat for severe weather. Northward from there, again, a smaller, low-end severe weather threat where you may see some heavy rain, frequent lightning, and gusty winds. Geneva County, Coffee County, Dale County, Houston County, Henry, Clay, and Early County. Overall, things starting to wind down, but we'll continue to watch the northern edge of this Boeing segment of storms for potentially some gusty winds and some heavy rain. Now I think most of the severe weather threat is mostly a Florida Panhandle issue. Another tornado warning popping up there as we get closer and closer to the Gulf Coast. That's starting to get a bit farther south out of our region and more in Panama City's neck of the woods. But heavy rain coming down along Interstate 10 from Definiak Springs, stretching all the way over into Mariana. And as we continue farther off toward the north, Geneva, be ready, probably within about the next minute or so. Coffee Springs as well. Within about the next minute or so, you'll see some of that heavier rain roll into the region. Enterprise as well could see a little bit of that heavier rain before too long. I don't know if we can get the camera at either the walls or the EEC. I don't know if we can get that punched up right quick and just see what we have going on there. But that second round of storms starting to move very, very close to Enterprise, Coffee Springs, and into Geneva. I'm not overly concerned with damaging winds with this line of storms. I think that threat is off toward your south, but I think we could still see some, at the very least, gusty winds as high as 40, 45, or 50 miles per hour as this continues to move off toward the east. Again, overall, the severe weather threat starting to gradually kind of come down over our Alabama counties, and it's kind of maximized over that southwest corner of the region. So hopefully, within about the next hour or so, we'll be able to completely move these storms out of the region, give you a for sure all clear, and then we'll start jumping into preparing for getting some of News 4 this morning underway. Looks like we may miss the very, very start of that as we kind of babysit these storms out of the southeast corner of the region, but I think we should be able to see at least a pretty good chunk of News 4 this morning. That would start at 5 o'clock. We can make a more firm decision as we get closer to the top of the hour, but I think for right now, the plan just needs to be we just kind of babysit some of these storms, at least into the early portions of News 4 this morning. We'll get these storms for sure more out of the region, and then I think we can jump into News 4 this morning as we get a little bit closer into that 5 o'clock hour. Again, a little bit of a recap of kind of what we're seeing right now across the region. Another round of a little bit of an increase in some of that rain over downtown Dothan. not really much of a severe weather threat. There may be some gusty winds right along the leading edge of this line, stretching from the northern portions of Coffee County, starting to move closer to Enterprise, Coffee Springs, Geneva, and then down to the Florida and Alabama state line. A little bit bigger threat for potentially some damaging winds, now moving through Mariana and the central portions of Seminole County. We'll jump down there right quick and kind of give a little bit of a observation of what's going on down there. Very, very heavy rain, lots of lightning, at the very least some gusty winds in Mariana. We will pull up the velocities and see kind of what we're seeing as far as wind speeds go. I would imagine most of these, around 50 or 60 miles per hour. So gusty winds, but shouldn't really be dealing with much in the way of damaging winds. And one other thing that I'll point out, it's not just overwhelmingly concerning, but that same area of rotation that produced that tornado warning and the tornado in the central portions of Houston County, there's still a little bit of rotation here. This is in Seminole County, just to the north of Desser, over in southwest Georgia. A little bit of broad rotation. It's something that we'll continue to watch for potentially another very, very quick spin-up tornadoes that drops off toward the south and the east. Not really overwhelmingly strong. It's not really overwhelmingly tight either as far as a potential tornado threat. But over there in the far eastern portions of Seminole County, there's just a little bit of broad rotation kind of right here, starting to move into the far eastern portions of Seminole County. That same rotation produced the tornado over in west central Houston County, and it's one that we'll continue to keep an eye on. But for right now, that's mostly a damaging wind threat, pretty much right over Desser, and that will continue to move kind of off toward the east-southeast, toward the Seminole County line. So again, probably within about the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, we'll get that round of storms moving through Seminole County on into southwest Georgia, and it moves out of our region. But for right now, right around Desser, some gusty winds, potentially up to some damaging winds here within that stronger area of storms. A little bit of broad rotation, but right now nothing that's really glaringly obvious that would suggest that we have much of a tornado threat here. Just going to run through NWS chat right quick, make sure we're not missing anything here. Some wind gusts of 54 miles per hour at a Mesonet station right around Definiak Springs. Trying to make sure there's no other things. Some thunderstorm wind damage 1 mile northeast of Ayrton in Dale County. Hail of 2.5 inches in Miller County in Georgia. That's outside of our region. Thunderstorm wind damage in Skipperville near Dale County. That definitely checks out there with some of those stronger storms that moved through earlier this morning. But again, it looks like overall things starting to wind down a little bit, but we'll continue to just kind of watch this as we start to kind of wind this down. We'll take a look at some of those stronger winds that are moving through portions of Seminole County. Some of those winds at least being picked up by radar right around 64, 65 miles per hour. So that's probably around 45 or 50 miles per hour down to the surface. A little bit of broad rotation, not really concerning as far as any sort of tornado potential, but something that we'll continue to watch as this moves through the central portions of Seminole County, and then probably within about the next 5 or 10 minutes or so, we'll see that move out of the region. So that's something we'll continue to watch. Elsewhere around the region, some heavy rain going on, but for the most part, so far so good, at least along and north of Interstate 10. To the south of Interstate 10, a little bit of a different scenario, a few different tornado warnings down there across the southern portions of the Florida Panhandle. Again, that's kind of more within Panama City's tornado warning. That's for Walton and Washington. So I wonder if we get a tornado warning a little bit farther off toward the north. We'll wait to see where that polygon gets drawn. There is a little bit of rotation that's just making its way over the radar site, but probably our more focused area of rotation be down here toward the south and the east, over closer to places like Ebro, but farther off toward the north from Definiak Springs through Caryville, Bonifate, Chipley, now starting to move into Vernon and Mariana. There's heavy rain. There's definitely some gusty winds. Nothing that really sticks out at me that would suggest we're borderlining on damaging winds, but definitely some gusty winds and still the higher threat for severe weather is starting to move a lot closer to the Gulf Coast, which is definitely some good news for us, not so much for those locations living a little bit closer to the Gulf Coast. You can see a couple of those tornado warnings for Freeport and right around the radar site. And then looking farther back off toward the north, we're continuing to watch this other little band of storms. This is part of that second round of that complex of storms that moved in from southwest Alabama earlier in the night. Enterprise, Geneva, and down into portions of the Florida Panhandle, still dealing with some heavy rain and some gusty winds. Can we get one of the Enterprise cameras punched up, whether that be the Rawls in downtown Enterprise or whether that be the EEC camera? If we can get one of those punched up, that looks like EEC, and yeah, there, and then there's the view from downtown Enterprise. Let's stay with this for a minute. Obviously some heavy rain coming down. You can see some gusty winds kind of pushing some of those rain curtains around, but things are definitely a little on the rougher side of things, but not looking too terribly intense there in downtown Enterprise. And I imagine we were continuing to see some very, very similar conditions farther off toward the south into Geneva County. Let's go back to the EEC camera right quick and take just a very, very quick look at that. I haven't seen any lightning popping up here in downtown Enterprise. And there's a look at fairly similar scenes out at the Enterprise Electric Co-op. Some rain coming down, some gusty winds, not really seeing much in the way of lightning. So yeah, we're getting pretty close to things winding down here.
Sunrise is in an hour.
Yeah, sunrise is in an hour, so we should start to see stuff a little bit better. But honestly, I think once we start to get towards sunrise, this really kind of isn't much of a problem for us anymore as these storms continue to push off toward the south and the east. So we should not be too terribly far away from dumping out of this and getting started with News 4 this morning. But at least for right now, as these storms continue to cross over Interstate 10 and at least move through portions of Geneva and into Coffee County, we'll keep an eye on it for now. But overall, things starting to wind down. There's not even a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for any of those storms farther off toward the north. So yeah, what's up, Kenneth? Okay. Yeah. All right, yeah, I got you. Just getting some instructions from our director in the back in the event that we do kind of dump out of this and get back to News 4 this morning. I will say we're probably pretty close to that, but yeah, we'll give a heads up before we do that. So let's see, things are starting to wind down a bit. So let's once again go back to a little bit of a view, a wider view of satellite and radar, kind of give you a good idea of what we're seeing elsewhere around the region. That did not do what I wanted it to do. We'll zoom in a little bit closer here. But as you can see, once we get these complexes of storms out of here, the rest of the day looks pretty nice. We'll still see some rain that hangs around through the rest of the morning. See some of that clearing starting to move over, about to move over Interstate 65, and eventually that starts to make its way into our neck of the woods as well. But even farther back off toward the west, once we get this rain done, skies should start to clear out pretty quickly. We should be looking at a fairly nice Friday afternoon for us around the region. We'll see mostly sunny skies and some cooler temperatures finally as well. We're finally seeing some relief as far as the rain goes, and we'll start to see some cooler temperatures as well. Things starting to wind down, but we still keep a little bit of a lingering severe weather threat. This is now mostly over the Florida Panhandle, I believe. A couple of tornado warnings farther down, closer to the Gulf Coast. Some heavy rain, maybe some gusty winds from Enterprise, Geneva, and down into Boniface. Some heavy rain continuing along Interstate 10 as well, stretching from the Phoenix Springs through Boniface, Chipley, Caryville, Mariana, and up into the central portions of Seminole County. And I think once we get this line pushed through Seminole County and Jackson County into the southeast of, into the south of Interstate 10, I think we're good to call it quits as far as the severe weather coverage goes. I think we'll spill over just a little bit into the start of News 4 this morning, but I don't think we'll interrupt too terribly much of that. Again, heavy rain starting to wind down into Phoenix Springs. Boniface still seeing some of that heavier rain. Chipley, Mariana, and eventually headed down toward Chattahoochee. And overall, things starting to wind down a little bit. We'll pull up base velocity right quick. Nothing that really jumps out at me as far as any sort of severe damaging winds go. So again, we're pretty much right on the closing edge of this.
Probably about 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, probably right as we get into time. Kenneth, I think we'll probably be good probably at around 5:05. I think that'll probably be a pretty good idea. We can probably wind down this severe weather coverage. We'll continue to monitor this as we head through News 4 this morning, but I think we're starting to enter a situation where a lot of the storms that would produce any sort of significant damage, if we were to see that, it would be much farther off toward the south across the southern portions of the Florida Panhandle. You can see some of those tornado warnings out around the Red Bay radar site. So let's give this until about 5 o'clock, 5:05. We'll start to wind down this live coverage. We'll switch over to News 4 this morning. We'll continue to stay updated on any of these storms as they continue to push off toward the south and the east. If you're in Dothan, there's some rain, probably a little bit of lightning, some gusty winds, but overall, rain is about all that it is. Maybe a little bit in the way of gusty winds moving through the central portions of Geneva County, but nothing that would rise to the level of severe or kind of damaging. Hartford, you'll start to see some of that heavier rain. Daleville will start to see some of that heavier rain again before too long, and eventually this push eastward over into Dothan and the Circle City. But yeah, I think for the most part, I think once we hit 5 o'clock, we'll wrap this up, and I think, Kenneth, by 5:05, we should be able to start News 4 this morning. Then we'll just continue to monitor everything from there. Been a fairly busy morning. We saw some fairly intense winds across the northern portions of the region, starting at around 2:30, 3 o'clock this morning. Moved through Crenshaw County, moved through Pike County. You saw the scenes in Troy, out at Troy University as those storms rolled through for a very brief moment. Winds got pretty intense, enough to at least very briefly knock out power. We've had pockets of damage reports up around that region as the storms moved through. Those continued to push over into Dale, Henry, and Barber County. Then we had the tornado warning for the central portions of Houston County. Produced a tornado shortly after it crossed over Highway 231, moved in between Cottonwood and Cottonwood Dragway, and then finally lifted over the southeast corner of the region. And then now we're just kind of watching this line of storms as it continues to move to the south of Interstate 10. And again, we're probably about 2 or so minutes away from really winding down this live coverage. And it's just something that we'll continue to keep an eye on as we get a little bit closer closer through the morning. And it's something that we'll continue to track as we head through News 4 this morning. For right now, some of the strongest winds that are at least still in our region. Tornado warning expired for Walton and Washington County, so that's definitely some good news there. Some of the heaviest rain is now moving to the south of Vernon. Heavy rain continues to fall in Chipley and Marianna. Grand Ridge starting to see the leading edge of that line move through. Maybe some gusty winds, but I'm not seeing anything that would suggest that we have damaging winds in place. Interstate 10, really from Marianna eastward over into Definiak Springs, will be a very, very wet go of it. But as we move farther off toward the north, yes, there's still some rain. It will be a wet morning commute for many of you around the region. But the good news is we got these storms through quick enough that we're not going to be dealing with any sort of potential for any severe weather during our morning commute. And that's definitely some good news there. We'll definitely take that, go ahead and get all this stuff moved through fairly quickly, and we can start to move through with our normal morning. Again, we'll continue to take this until 5 o'clock. And then we'll go ahead and get started with News 4 this morning. But it's been a very active morning. It's still a fairly active morning for portions of the Florida Panhandle, but portions of the Florida Panhandle are about where it's going to be limited to throughout the rest of this morning. We'll see some heavy rain, some gusty winds farther off toward the north, but I'm not anywhere as concerned with the potential for severe weather, really from about Definiak Springs, Bonifay, Marianna, into the central portions of Seminole County, northward from there. Not really all that concerned with any sort of threat for severe weather, but still a lingering threat for severe weather continues to move farther off toward the south and away from us. 4:58, we'll again give this another couple of minutes, kind of give you a quick little radar tour of what is going on, and then we'll go ahead and get started with News 4 this morning. Vernon, you're seeing heavy rain coming down. Rain starting to wind down in Caryville a little bit. Heavy rain in Chipley. Heavy rain in Marianna. Heavy rain about to pick up in places like Grand Ridge. Farther off toward the north, heavy rain, gusty winds moving through the eastern portions of Geneva County. Hartford eventually into Slocum. You'll see the rain pick up, maybe some gusty winds, maybe a few strikes of lightning as well. Then this continues to move eastward over into Taylor and Highway 231. Rain gets heavy, not concerned with severe weather. Then farther off toward the north, really a lot of the same situation. Heavy rain, a little bit of lightning, maybe some gusty winds. Clay Hatchie, Daleville, farther back off toward the east into Enterprise, and eventually farther down the line, Ozark, Newton, Midland City, down into Dothan. You'll see some heavy rain, some gusty winds, maybe a strike of lightning or two, but overall the severe weather threat starting to come down. The severe threat's even lower across the northern portions of the region. A steady rain will continue to fall. Crenshaw, Pike, Barber County, Troy, Clio, Eufaula, Jack, Brantley, over toward Luverne into the northern portions of Crenshaw County. A steady rain continues to fall in Andalusia. But again, for the most part, here in the northern portions of the region, the severe weather threat just about over. A very, very low-end threat for a strong storm or two. Geneva, Dale, Houston, Henry County, not overly concerned with the threat for severe weather, but there may still be a gusty wind. And the overall main threat for severe weather still continues over portions of the Florida Panhandle, but that continues to very quickly race off toward the south and the east. We'll continue to monitor that as we head into News 4 this morning. We're just about ready to hit the top of the hour. I think we're good to wind down with severe weather coverage and go ahead and jump into News 4 this morning, about a minute or two late. But I'm good to wind down here. I'm meteorologist Zack Hatcher, meteorologist Zach Webster. Zack Hatcher's been with me throughout the morning tracking all these storms. And yeah, I think we're ready to close this down, and we'll continue to monitor the rest of these storms as we head through News 4 this morning.
This has been a forewarned weather alert.
Was the scene outside our studio this morning, as we've already seen 2 radar confirmed tornadoes in Taylor and in the Panhandle.